This is the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast here on YouTube. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Todd Crail, Professor of Environmental Sciences at my alma mater, the University of Toledo. We talk about some stuff that a lot of people have actually been asking for: conservation, ecology, environmentalism. Todd talks a lot about awesome plant species, fish species, the oak openings. We go off on some pretty awesome tangents. By far one of the most knowledge building episodes I've done to date. It's been very fun, and I hope you guys are excited to learn some damn science tonight. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast. Today we have Professor Ph.D. Todd Crail, the, I would say, renowned expert on the oak openings. Currently, you are somewhat of a master of this area, and I've actually heard you talk a few times, and it's very exciting to have you on my podcast.
It's exciting to be doing this. Thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome. I'm actually super excited because every time you talk, I'm like, I can't comprehend everything you're taking in. It's like,
you got to take it in pieces.
My first question I like to ask everybody is, I like to start at the beginning because everybody knows you as a professor, as this well-versed man. But let's step back in time to when you were a young lad. What got you to this point where you were just like, I'm an expert on the oak openings? How did this all come about? And not even more than the oak openings, but just this Northwest Ohio ecology.
Sure. I was born this way.
Cool. Yeah.
I spoke early. My mom got to hear me. I was fascinated with water. And I would be like, oh, big waters. And this was, at 2 years. Just telling her, and she was like, okay, he's into water. And then she couldn't get me to go on a walk because I was so buried in the front yard with all the things to learn about. And that's kind of been the mode the whole way through, is I just wanted to know everything. And so I'm kind of a collector of information, and science has given me a way to begin to describe the landscape that I see around myself and how interactions happen and things like that. And next thing you know some things, and people are like, hey, you should do grad school. And I didn't think I was qualified for that because I did undergrad so horribly.
Didn't we all?
But, that's given me a lot of empathy and angle to help students who are coming through school now, because I was so bad at it. I know all the traps and things like that, and I can really help them where they're at.
So it's always astounding when you meet people who know something like I feel like just doing the podcast, working at the parks a little bit here and there, I'm around people who know a lot of stuff, and I can never learn enough. I never can learn enough. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm sure you might even feel that way as someone who teaches and goes out and
That's why I teach, because I'm always learning.
Yeah. And what astounds me is you're well versed in not just one little niche area. You know a lot. You're always posting pictures of these little tiny fish. Mm-hmm. I'm like, how do you catch these? Mm-hmm. How do you even get into that, first off? And then how do you catch these fish?
It's a great story.
You're snorkeling, and then your photography is great, by the way. The pictures you take of these little, I'm just like, you're like the whole package. You're the professor. You got the photography down. You go in the field. You don't just sit in the classroom and smoke the pipe and it's.
Ivory towers are boring. I want to be outside.
I feel you.
And then I walk people out, and I'm like, welcome to my laboratory. There's so much going on out here. Knowing anything is hard to do. To know something takes a considerable amount of work, and there's so, opinions are, they're dime a dozen these days, and it can be more interesting than that. Mm-hmm. The fish, like I said, I did bad, and I wasn't that great at undergrad. mainly because I wanted to be fishing the entire time, because that's what I was interested in. And so I got out of school and I got a job, and it sucked. This thing called Windows 95 had just come out.
Beautiful.
And this thing, the internet, was just popping up. And one of my first real jobs was trying to get people to want to set up websites on the internet. And at that time, it was pedophiles and pornographers, and that was pretty much it.
I don't think much has changed, to be quite honest.
No. That's the core of any human civilization is sex, and that's what, and people who whatever. But
are you talking like IT basically, or like you doing just like website?
Well, and then we got some customers and we got busy, and they're like, "Well, here, you're going to learn how to make a web page." And I don't know if you ever got to see farmertodd.com before it disappeared. Don't look at it now because some pornography place has taken over the domain. It's gorgeous.
Probably my website's probably got taken over as well.
Yeah. But I had all my aquarium stuff and the fish stuff and the mussel stuff and all that on there, and it kind of became obsolete because it just sat there. But back to the core of it. So I had some money because I was corporate and I loved fishing. I lived over at Windjammer Apartments. I had the lake right out the back door, so I could fish off my porch if I wanted. And so I bought this big 125-gallon tank, and I was going to keep the fish that I wanted to catch in there so that I could see how they fed. So I could learn how a strike from a crappie looked and what that would translate into feeling in the rod and when the right time was to strike. And, well, I got caught doing science there because I'm starting to test hypotheses and things like that. And I got on that internet thing, and there were these other people who were keeping native fish, but they were keeping all these other really weird fish. And I'm like, where are all these fish from? The darters, I knew minnows. It was bait, basically.
Yeah.
And so I figured, well, you know what? I could get a seine net, and I could use that to catch bait, but maybe I can learn some things too. And so my buddy lived in Sylvania at the time. We went down to 10 Mile Creek right down from Northview High School. We set up the net, and there was just this one crazy run where I ran down the stream kicking rocks and stuff, and we picked it up, and there's orange throat darters in spawning condition. Just happened to be these orange and iridescent blue, metallic blue fish just filled the net up, and I was just like, what the hell is this? And the bait is way more interesting than bass. Bass are just kind of meh.
And they're not that hard to catch.
No, they're really easy to catch, But so I used to pride myself in turning lead and plastic into something some predator was going to eat, and I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah. Well, you're going to probably get a lot of crap from a lot of fishermen, but I mean, whatever.
I fish still too. I beg my students. I'm like, you got to get me down on a walleye run because I won't do it for myself. I'm too busy, and I'm like, I got to get down there.
It's like right now too.
And it's right now. They're already in. DNR got 6 the other day. Yeah.
Oh my God.
In the Sandusky. So I know they're up on the Maumee. Yeah.
So I know you do a lot of work on the darters specifically, right? Like I see those more often when you're posting stuff, and it's really interesting because I don't know a lot about them. I know they're kind of, I don't want to say hard to catch, but are there's anything about them that's like really special? Because I just don't know. They're just cool.
So they're part of the family Percidae, which includes walleye and perch, and the predominant numbers of species in there. There's 220, I think, described at this point. They're wholly North American. The center of diversity is in the southeast in Tennessee and North Carolina. And then there's radiation around that based on which rivers you're in. Many of them are extremely colorful. They're extremely personable. When you're snorkeling, they just come right up to you.
Where do you do that snorkeling? Because that looks like the coolest thing.
Well, we need to. You want video? I've got days worth
Yeah.
of video.
I've seen you post
that
it.
needs to be edited and turned into something useful because it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
I don't have time to mess with that stuff. So, and scripting it would be easy. Just don't have time.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
So, so anywhere the water's clear enough to see, I'll make a couple trips locally up to Huron River is pretty good. Island recreation area is pretty easy access. That's where I usually take people to show them what you can see. For a lot of that stuff, we're headed down south. I had a field class where we are going to go down to the Blue Ridge in North Carolina and Tennessee, but we've been corona'd.
The real heart of the matter here is oak openings.
Yeah.
And I don't want. Everybody always thinks it's just the park.
The park
which is cool. The park is amazing. Yeah.
Pines in the park.
Yeah, there's the pine thing is crazy. They do look cool, and I hear that all the time. But I guess what's your thought on the pines? Everybody's always about the pines.
It's agriculture. It's really big corn.
Yeah,
that's the intention. The intention was to grow it, to cut it down.
They're actually logging them right now.
Yeah.
It's right by my house.
They're trying to get something out of it before they're just complete waste. Mm-hmm. They're sick.
Well, they're in collapse, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in middle collapse. And what happens if you do nothing is they're going to die. Mm-hmm. And then they start to fall down, and then they're fuel for the next drought that we have. Mm-hmm. And that's not the type of fuel that we want on the ground. And when they start doing that, once the canopy does begin to really open up, there's a ton of organic litter accumulation, which is a really good substrate for invasive shrub species. Mm-hmm. And so, it's not really an ecosystem per se at this point. People will tell me, well, you go up into these red pine forests in northern Michigan. And I'm like, but that's not what this is.
Yeah, those are native to that area.
They're native to that area. They're further spaced out. Mm-hmm. Even in silviculture installations, they're still even better spaced out. These should have been thinned 30 years ago.
Some of those pines are huge now, too.
Yeah.
You drive down any of the surrounding roads around Oak Openings Metro Park, and they're just massive pines all the way around.
But you look up in the canopies, and you start pine bark beetle is one of the problems. They're hyperdense, and so the beetle's able to get through it really easy. When you have monocultures, pests go through it very fast because there's nothing in their way. Mm-hmm. And you get in there, and it should be about 30% canopy, and we're at best in some of those 11%, 10%.
Wow.
So they're just done. They're done. The work needed to be done 20 years ago to thin it out so that they weren't putting so much pressure on each other. It's the same problem out west. We suppressed fire in those systems. They got hyperdense during wet cycles. Then you get a dry cycle, and then nobody has enough, and so then they all die. And then you kick a crown fire through it, and then it sterilizes and reinforces that problem. So, for the ones at Oak Openings Metro Park or in the Maumee State Forest, you have to understand that it was agriculture. Mm-hmm. It's no different than the corn. And that's one of the things I like to try to key in on is we get shamed for taking our crops every year and our green lake resulting from that. And in a lot of these state and national forests, the reason they put those in was to get wood. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to harvest.
Well, there's money in wood too. It's even easy money, but they grow fast. They're
yeah. So when they go in and do management, everyone's pissed because they're messing with the trees. And yeah.
Well, I'm sure more than anyone, conservation's not always a public-friendly kind of thing.
No, it looks terrible.
Bulldozers.
I do restoration work. It looks like shit.
Well, one of the things, I was out at cannot remember. It was a Nature Conservancy property over north of Airport Highway, right over the railroad tracks. You guys were doing a big restoration project there maybe a year and a half ago. Probably still doing it. And something that you brought to my attention that was really crazy was the maple trees. I had no idea that was, I don't want to say an issue, quote unquote, but I had no idea. I just assumed since they're everywhere all the time that they had such an impact on the environment.
They change it dramatically in those soils. You know, if you're seeing red maples in the Swan Creek floodplain along the Maumee, no problem. That's where they were historically, and we get into trouble when we start talking about historic because most people's version of restoration is some white guy jumped off of a boat. That's the context for management, and there have been lots of people here before that. The entire Western Hemisphere was managed by Native people. It's super freaking racist to say that they were in harmony, and it's not the case.
I read, I think the book was called The Ecological Indian or something. Completely changed my whole perspective.
That's a great reference. Yeah,
they burned forests.
They burned everything.
They ran buffalo off cliffs and just ate like their livers and tongues and stuff.
The Amazon. This is something people may not realize. Along the main branches of the Amazon are managed forests for nuts and berry production. It's it's the lungs of the earth or something like that. Actually, algae is the lungs of the earth. Well, but the Amazon is a constructed ecosystem by humans.
And I think that's a hard concept for a lot of people, especially now, because everybody lives they live this 50 to 70, 80-year-old lifespan. So everything before that is just like whatever. But because my background's anthropology, so I went to UT, I did anthropology, like a little bit of conservation in there, and then so I was always interested in that human interaction with the landscape, and it just was like, if there's a human population anywhere, there's no way that landscape is like native or untouched we're always doing stuff. We can't help it. We can't help ourselves. We gotta touch it.
Species do that. Yeah. I mean, I flash up a picture of penguins just completely decimated an entire landscape.
Yeah.
But their population is constrained to that place, and so we say, "Oh, well, that's nature." No, there's a natural world. There's forcings in that natural world. They respond to those forcings, and humans have just done it. They've basically constructed an ecological niche, the place where they live, on a planetary scale. That's what's different.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought about it like that, but the animals do the same thing.
They do the same
Squirrels
thing.
running around planting nuts in the ground, and and from an evolutionary perspective, everything's always changing all the time. But we only see it like for that long, so it's
this fragile balance stuff. I mean, it's just it's a myth that came out of The Greatest Generation. And has been reinforced by the Disney Corporation. Throw it out; it's worthless. The only thing that's certain is change.
And that's I think a lot of people have a hard time with that concept. And when I was in college, don't get me wrong, I was the vegetarian, like, oh, you can't be doing this. But as I learn more about, because you also have to stop and think about how the world operates too, and you can't people want to take down this and that and the other thing, and like to some extent, some stuff's bad, stuff's good. Well, you can argue either way, but like when it comes down to it, like what is happening with humans and the way they interact with the earth is evolution happening in real time. We're just really good at what we do,
and that becomes that's the big take home. That's where in class we get to a point where I say our species has gotten to a point where it knows what it's doing, and it can go two ways at this point. We either make it sustainable and resilient for our species, and part of that is making it sustainable and resilient for other species, or we just go back to the dark ages and then we have this whole experiment again, or not.
Well, yeah, and a lot of it gets out of control because everybody has their own opinion on it, and there's just a lot of people. So nobody's going to agree on anything ever. And we could talk about that for 10 years on this podcast and we would never come to a conclusion. And it is good. I'm glad that you I don't meet many people that would agree with me because I love nature as much or more than anybody I know. But I'm also a realist in some ways. Like, we can't fix everything, and fix is relative.
Fix is relative.
Like, I don't...
So that's one of our lab exercises is called Good for Who. And we make students like, okay, I could cut down this entire forest. If I cut down this entire forest, does a species... there's a whole suite of species that benefits. There's a whole suite of species that don't benefit.
Well, and it's funny because my brother and I don't agree on a lot of things, as most brothers don't. Right. And we were trapped in a cabin together over a family ski trip over a weekend. You know how lovely those can be. And the family is getting these, they get political debates going, all this stuff. And at one point we agreed on something like, if you think about it, the Earth will end someday, and they'll just get eaten by the sun. I mean, we just do what we can to do things the way that we think they should be, and to benefit like the species or that species, or to learn as much as possible. And I was like, I actually agree with you for once in my life. I actually we met at this point, and I was like, wow, it still doesn't change my perspective. I still love nature and the outdoors and all this stuff, but
I like wilderness, which is the absence of the perception of humans.
I like the way you put that. I really do.
I mean, that's our legacy is a thing of sediment this thick at the bottom of the ocean that's loaded with plastic, radiation, and phosphorus.
I mean, what do they say? They change the date every freaking year.
Oh, for the Anthropocene.
How long have humans been around? When I was in school, it was like, genetically modern humans have been around for 100,000 years or something like that, and it just goes back every year. So it's like even that debate's getting old in my head.
But the geologists are really keying in on this whole idea of the Anthropocene, and that this is the world where humans have derailed the normal background processes, and you can see in climate cycles and Milankovitch cycles, and we probably don't need to get into all that here.
I don't even know what that means, but I'm interested.
Well, maybe that's a follow-up. It's complicated, but right now we should be plunging into a cold snap. And what we see is you're watching this variance through time, and it came up dramatically, and that's why we have prairies here. That's part of it. And that's why Lucas County is so exciting for an ecologist, because a whole bunch of stuff got left behind. So it got hot, and then you see some wibble wobble, and then it starts going down, but then it flattens out. And then you see these different rises of great civilizations, and it gets hotter, and then they collapse, and it gets colder. And then the next one pops up, and it gets colder as they collapse. And now we're just kind of going up. And part of that's our technology that's allowing us to do that so quickly. Yeah,
exactly. The stuff right in front of our face.
Like, here it is, you got to know what that electronic transmission, where did that power come from? Everyone's like, oh, electric cars. Well, where are you getting the electric from? It is all tied together.
It all comes from the same place at one point or another.
It came from the sun, so maybe we should just tap into it directly.
There we go. That's a thought. I mean, I think you might have just changed the world. I don't know.
Go right to the source. When we have a big spill of solar, it's a nice day.
I don't even know. And we're gonna derail so much on this. I can already tell. But I can't understand why that's a political debate, other than some business would have to go out of business for that to be in business big time. It's crazy.
I show them the business model of American Electric and Power. They are already at 47% reduction in their CO2 emissions from 2005. Paris was 32% by 2030. They're already at 47%. Most of it was a switch over to natural gas, and that comes with other costs because of the way that they get the natural gas and fracking. And that's why I tell the students, if you like fracking, I'm going to piss you off. If you don't like fracking, I'm going to piss you off. Like,
that's the best kind of professor.
Yeah, like this is a great
Piss everyone
model.
off.
It's just a great model for critical thought.
And well, yeah, it makes you think.
Yeah. Why? How?
Yeah, I hated all the classes where it was like one way or the other. Like, I want to figure it out on my own. You know, make me read this book and that book that argue the same point from different sides, and because that's where you start to think. You don't. I don't. This guy can say whatever he wants. This guy can say whatever he wants. And you know, I'm sure you know in the world of scholarly everything, anybody can say whatever they want. Still, they just have to prove it a little bit better than the average journalist.
That's right. That
Me,
is a lot of work.
I can say whatever I want.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Because nobody's checking it.
Right.
That's why I have people like you on here to say, what the hell are you talking about? But back to the oak openings. We went on an awesome tangent there. Actually, I was really stoked about that.
So that climate cycle really is what has made the oak openings the oak openings. And this is what people don't believe. This land is flat and it is boring. And I want to move to the mountains and I want to do all these kinds of things. But what they don't realize, and I do this with the biomes lecture now, when you're looking at the temperature and the moisture, so moisture level is usually a bottom axis, and the temperature is the other. So where it's really hot and wet, you have tropical rainforest, and you're moving along this line. And where it's really cold and dry, you have tundra. And so there's 9 different biomes that we have on Earth. And 3 of them are in Lucas County with representative, this is continental scale stuff. And we have representative communities, they're communities, but that represent that. And part of that is the retreat of the Great Glacier left a lot of northern stuff here. And then it got really hot, that high peak. So as we came out of the last ice age, you've got that northern stuff that's left behind in our wet prairies. And some of the stuff in the wet music prairies. Then it got hot, and prairie invaded all the way over to Pennsylvania. And then it started to cool off a bit, and so then the southern forests came in. And so you've got these northern, you've got these western, and you have these southern things that all happen here in Lucas County.
Well, the thing that it probably blows most people away, but when you go into any Oak Openings Region Park, like, it's so obviously different from everything around everywhere else.
Yes.
Like, it's noticeable. Even if someone doesn't care about outdoors, if they don't even care about anything related to nature, you go there and you look and you're like, this is not the same.
It's not the same.
And one of the coolest pictures I've ever seen of the Oak Openings was just like, you know, those, I'm sure you know, but for anybody listening, is those pictures where it's like, you can tell someone hand drew it, and they're like those like cheesy park maps or like pictures that they have hanging in like old park buildings. I love those pictures. I don't know why, like sentimental. But it was like how the water levels change in the sand dune areas where they switch between the prairies. And I was like, that's so, like, it changes a lot.
A lot.
And it's so amazing because it's just like, there's sand dunes in Northwest Ohio, which is insane. There's cactus.
There's
This weird shifting water table. I mean, why aren't more people stoked about this? I'm so blown away.
I am too. The more I learned, the more I just got sucked in. I mean, I don't have a degree. I don't have the degrees I have because I wanted to be Dr. Crail. In fact, I tell them, you don't want to see Dr. Crail because Dr. Crail's a dick. And he shows up when you just don't want to just keep that guy out of here.
Yeah, we don't need that.
No, we don't need that. That's the degrees came just because I was so absorbed in learning, and I might as well get the validation out of it.
Yeah.
Why not? Somebody else is gonna subsidize all this learning for me. Yeah, I'll go do that.
It's like, why wouldn't you? It's why I went to get my undergrad. Like, everybody's always like, oh, what can you do with that anthropology degree? I was like, I just wanted to, why does it always have to be about, like, because I don't care about the whole corporate ladder stuff. Like, that sounds boring to me. I was like, I legitimately wanted to understand it because as a young lad, my brain was just like not comprehending it. And I sat in those classes and like, math, astronomy, whatever. I was like, I could care less. But when it got into like the heavy The most fun thing I ever did was wrote my undergrad dissertation for anthropology. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, because all I did was write about what I wanted to learn about all day for a whole semester. It's the only thing I did.
Right.
It was amazing.
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
And that shows like the difference between getting a degree because you're told you have to, and learning. Mm-hmm. Because like nobody's gonna listen to this and be like, this guy just doesn't care about the oak openings. If they did, they're insane.
Yeah, they're delusional.
So, say 5 million people listen to this. That aren't from Northwest Ohio? What would you tell them about the oak openings that probably people here don't even know?
The thing I would tell the people in the area is how many people come from other places to see what we have. Yeah. That's where I start my course for my non-majors.
It's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. I go out to Erwin Prairie during the biggest week in American birding, and I pull in that parking lot, and I've got to figure out how to get a high enough definition fisheye of the license plates. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, guys, when I go out there, license plates say Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho. They say Maine. They say New Hampshire. They say North Carolina, South Carolina. I don't get it. It's like
they come from China and across the globe.
And you can't even see the international ones because they have Ohio or Michigan vans. Yeah, basically.
You drive out there during the biggest week in birding and you see a guy with a camera that costs more than your car. To see a bird that's 1 inch tall.
So Ethan Kistler got a shot at McGee when there was a Kirtland's warbler that was just right in view on one of the trails, and it looks like a Cedar Point line. And I'm like, you don't believe me? Here, watch, take a look at this. And I'm like, all right, now let's count all the money that's going through there. And I'm like, that lens right there, how much is that lens? I'm like, it's $15,000. That guy has an insurance policy on that lens in case he nicks it.
Yes.
Because then it's worthless.
You know the lens is expensive when they have a tripod for the lens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, you see those, most people probably seen those sports photographers with those lenses that are as long as your arms. Mm-hmm. That's a car. Mm-hmm. You could buy a car.
You can buy a car.
And I know because I have a lot of camera equipment.
Yeah,
and you do too.
I do too.
And I look at that stuff and I'm like, dear God, this is for a bird. For a little, I mean, a bird. A bunch of birds.
A bunch of birds. Yeah. Yeah.
And people, I get so annoyed when people around here are like, oh, it's so boring.
So boring. No, you're boring.
Oh, yeah. All there is to do is go to Cedar Point. Like, we have the Great Lakes, not just Lake Erie.
The 11th largest body of fresh water by surface area in the world. We have the largest tributary to 20% of the world's fresh water.
Right up the road.
Right down the road. There are more species of fish in the Maumee River. It's questionable. We almost have them in the Ottawa. But we can say with definitive answer, there's more species of fish in the in the Maumee River than there are in the Columbia River and the Colorado combined. Right down the street.
You know what the difference is? The color of the water, which I've been arguing for years is the biggest whining argument of all time, and I hate it so much. I've said it on every freaking podcast we've done. I don't even know a number on, but every one. I don't understand it. I've kayaked the whole river.
I know, man.
I love it.
I know.
I've dunked in it. I've jumped in it. I've swam in it. I've fished in it. And it's like there's thousands of walleye fishing around the river within the next month or two.
The biomass in that river is insane. There's more fish biomass in the Western Basin than there is in all the other Great Lakes combined.
There's fly fishing shops in Toledo, Ohio. There's a Bass Pro. Yeah. And people say it's boring.
It's boring.
I want to slap them.
I know. I'll tell you what's boring are trout streams.
They actually catch fish all the time in those.
Yeah. They're just doing their thing. And, you snorkel in a trout stream. The trout's adaptation is to catch things that fall into the river. There's nothing going on in a trout stream. They're boring.
They look nice, though.
That's always look nice.
The definitive thing for people.
And that's the thing. I don't get it either.
I was just talking to someone the other day. 4 days on the river, full 12-hour days kayaking. Not a single person.
None.
I saw a Coast Guard boat.
Yep.
I did see a guy on some other weird boat, like a big single-man rower thing with the sliding chair. That was it. He wasn't even a kayak. But you go out there in the summer, they have kayak rentals for pennies on the dollar of anywhere you could go. You can drive to Hocking Hills and pay $70 or whatever for a day rental. You can go to the Maumee and it's like $15 or something. Metro Parks does it for like
nothing. Yeah, the cost to have somebody tell you what you're looking at. Yeah. What value?
I don't understand it. I can't get enough.
I'm with you.
I go to Oak openings 2 to 3 times a week, the Metro Park, and just wander around and take pictures.
So much to see. It doesn't get old. And that's what I love about the Savannas. They're not the same anytime you go. They're different every time you go. Erwin Prairie, different every time you go.
Well, you've done a lot of work with the burning too. I don't think a lot of people even know what that's about because I want to go to one of those because they're so cool just to like watch. Like everybody's. They see the big smoke clouds and they freak out, and
it looks destructive.
Yeah.
Management and restoration look destructive. They do. But that's, we've tried to tell the natural world what to do, and because some things don't look the way we expect them to. And then we begin to expect how it looks now to always be in place for forever, and it's not sustainable. And, I think the fire science is really beginning, particularly out west, because they have no other choice at this point.
Yeah.
They have no other choice. It's going to do it on its own.
They better figure it out.
They've got to figure it out. After Australia this year, they got to figure it out. And they're actually going back to indigenous cultures and finding out what they did. Because the native peoples, they understood the relationship with fire and what it meant. It brought the bounty out of the world. That was what caused mass of food. They're much more, they had to use the natural world with the technology that they had, and the technology that they had was fire. It's not, big combines and that are growing corn to feed to cars. I don't even know how we got to this point.
I don't know, McDonald's.
Yeah, what's all that supposed to be? Now we're growing corn to make ethanol, and that was the Obama administration's green policy. I'm like, you're going to feed cars now, really?
Well, any administration policy usually doesn't end well, no matter which side you're coming from.
No, I just don't have much use for any of it right now.
Yeah, none of it's ever really too practical. It's always just like this lump decision that affects everything and nothing all at once.
How do I profit the most?
Yeah.
And we've got to change that model.
Well, and there's so much freaking money in the outdoors.
Yeah.
I've said this before, you cannot have a Bass Pro in an area and not be raking in hand over foot. I can't walk out of there without spending $200.
No. This is Temptation Town.
It's bad. Don't go there.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I don't go there either.
You can walk into the fishing department and spend $500 and have a fishing pole and like a little bag in your hand. And that's it.
Oh yeah.
So back to, since this is pretty hot topic right now, walleye fishing. I always love. They're such cool fish. They're predatory. They've got this. And I don't know much about fish. I'm not going to lie to the people. But the walleye are like, when you catch them and they come out of the river, they're this big white lump. And then I put them in a cooler for a little bit while they're resting, and they turn into this big green. How do fish change their colors? Like, that's like the coolest thing ever.
Oh, well, yeah. I got to show you chub nests where they flash from this just white fish to just hot red. They're called chromatophores. They're cells in their scales, and when they pump blood into that cell, it ignites, and that's how they do it. So when they're stressed out, they flare up. That's why a lot of fish, if you're catching them fishing, they're going to look really dark, and then you have them sit in a bucket a little while, and they aren't as colorful. But if they die, then all of a sudden they release all the it releases those cells, and then they all fire, and then it'll go out in a little bit.
Just stuff like that is just mind-blowing. I can't do that. My skin gets a little red in the summertime.
Yeah.
That's about the best I get. But, yeah, walleye, like, the way that they live is just crazy. Like, they come out from this gigantic Lake Erie. They swim up this river. They spawn, and they're just... Have you fished on Lake Erie, I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed that on Lake Erie, they're like the most boring fish to catch of all time. And then you get them in the walleye run in the river, and it's like the most fun fish to catch.
Oh, yeah. Especially at the end after the ladies leave. Those males, when they just turn on, oh, my gosh, they'll rip the rod right out of your hands. Like, this is not a walleye.
Yeah, because on the lake, it's just like hauling up a lump.
Just like,
Yeah, it's always cold, and they're the most boring fish to catch. How much work do you do with when the algae blooms inevitably blow up? Because a little bit of backstory, and this is when I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast. This is going to be weird, so be prepared.
All right, that's fine.
I subscribe to the PBS streaming network.
Okay.
Coolest thing ever. So I was watching Great Lakes Now one night. Yeah, you already know where this is going. And I fall asleep, and then I wake up at like 3 in the morning, and it's just your face on my like 56-inch screen TV. I was like, holy shit!
Todd Crail is a lecturer of environmental sciences at the University of Toledo.
In 2014, we woke up in August one morning, and we were told we couldn't drink our water. The reason we couldn't drink the water is because of microcystis. And under certain conditions, the microcystis will become extremely abundant. In certain circumstances, produces a lot of toxin called microcystin, which will wreck your liver with a very small concentration in parts per billion.
With his students, Crail conducts field research, propagating native plants on the campus grounds and in city roundabouts. Their goal is to rebuild the natural filter of the Black Swamp one plot at a time, thereby reducing the amount of nutrient runoff feeding the algae bloom.
Wetlands are important in Ohio because they are what I call the liver of the landscape. When you have a healthy amount of wetlands, they will fix any changes, they'll help balance the load, they'll help make things livable. The nitrogen goes into a wetland, and if the conditions are right, particularly having water in the summertime, we begin a process called denitrification that will convert nitrate or ammonia molecules of nitrogen into nitrogen gas and send them off into the atmospheric pool, which disallows these blooms to happen.
And then I was like, I gotta get this guy on my podcast. weirdest segue into something ever. And that was my moment. I was like, I'm gonna message Todd on Facebook and get him on my podcast. So that is where I thought of it.
Awesome. Awesome.
And then I was like, wait, how much stuff do you do? Like, what don't you do, I guess, is the real question. But I don't remember what the segment was about.
My wife will tell you I don't do the dishes.
That's the only thing I do. I only do the dishes. She does everything else.
She does everything else. Yeah. I put off the dishes is what I do. I do them.
I can't blame you.
Yeah, just I have to hand wash them. I'm just not into it.
Yeah. Me too. I hate it.
I'll fold the clothes all day long.
Yeah, that's easy.
That's easy, yeah. I just don't want to stand there and wash dishes.
Don't blame me.
Yeah, so again, I'm a collector of information. I don't do the research, but my colleagues do the research, and they can't be all places at all times. And in that scenario on the Great Lakes Now story, my work with using native plants and landscaping is really where that got tied in. The people who did that clip are actually a much more interesting story than myself.
Well, you're the face I saw, so
I'm the face. If I have to be the face, that's fine. I'm okay with it.
Hey, I can relate, man.
Yeah.
Relayer of info.
So those folks. So these are some young folks who were. 3 of them went to Southview. Another they met along the way. Was from Grand Rapids or Battle Creek, somewhere, or Kalamazoo. They went to Princeton. He went to MIT. They were doing the East Coast thing. One of them was going globally. And they're like, this is pointless. We're not changing anything. And so they sat down to think about where they could go, where they could make the most impact. And it was the big duh moment, home. In Toledo, there's space.
Yeah.
No one's going to tell you, well, they may say poo-poo your idea or whatever, but there's space to do things, to make change, to make big changes. And so they came back, and part of what they wanted to tell was the story of water and the Black Swamp, and how that's all connected into the agricultural systems and into the political systems. And I mean, everything's connected. You cannot. It's a law. You just can't get away. Everything's connected, and everything goes someplace. So they had found out about me because of the native plant stuff, and then probably your experience where, holy crap, where's this guy stop?
You're on everything.
Yeah,
Nature Conservancy, Metro Parks, UT. I mean, you gotta get your hand in every piece of the pie. It's a fun.
That's why we chose to stay here. I'm from Toledo.
Same.
We chose to stay here. I get done with my PhD, and we looked at other jobs, but I was thrilled to be given the job that I wanted, which is a lecturer, not as a research professor. All my time is focused around instruction. So, but yeah, that ran into them, and we're doing the native plants on campus now, and
that's awesome. When I was there, they had some bullshit. We actually went to the president because we were so pissed. They were tearing out the native gardens because of like the beautification committee or something, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard."
So now we're fixing that.
Thank God.
Yeah.
I was so pissed.
They asked us, and that became part of a package where the university is paying our students. So our students have a green fund. They pay $5 in, and it generates a ton of money every year. And so they wrote a proposal to pay to do the service learning. So they facilitate the other students working with the native. So we've got all these people growing plants from all across campus, touching it, doing it, and now the facilities loves it. They want to do it everywhere, and they're paying for the plants. And that was the first ask. They're like, "So what do we do out here?" Because former administrations, not the Gaber administration. Gaber administration's been very supportive in a lot of different things that the former was not. They put a bunch of garbage out there. They totally wrecked Seamus and Eileen's stuff.
He was my professor.
It was, yeah.
I love that guy.
And I got to see them last summer, and he's like, "You're doing what?"
Did he retire yet? He'll never retire, but
yeah, same here. Like, we don't go away.
Dude,
we're not going to go away.
Mitras was like my hero because he didn't give a shit.
Oh, that guy was born without fucks.
Yeah, I love
it. Done.
He was, everybody hated him. And I just am naturally drawn to those kind of people because I'm very similar. And my favorite, this will derail a whole nother hour.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I was sitting in class one day, just some undergrad, and his classes are no bullshit. He gives you 30 articles, the whole scholarly article that everybody's scared of, 30 hand-picked articles, and he says, take as many notes as you want. The test is over these 30 articles. 4 weeks later, you have a test on it, and nobody reads them. You can literally write out. He said it has to be handwritten. You could write the whole damn article out and bring it in. He wouldn't care. He'd let you use your notes. Nobody did it. Everybody failed. I was like, he literally told us what was going to be on the test. He said information from these articles. You had like 10 essay questions on any of those. Yeah. And he would flip out on people, and it was the best thing. I used to go after I graduated, just go sit in his office and just bullshit with him for like hours. Great guy. But that's what made me pissed. He and his wife Eileen worked so hard on those gardens. Their students put in hours, and they just ripped them out one day. We were pissed. A 22-year-old me was out there picketing and ready to start World War III over this. But I'm glad you're taking it back over.
We're putting it back. Yeah. Nothing's permanent.
Well, yeah, I'm sure somebody else can come in at any moment.
Sure.
Very political, these college campuses.
We'll deal with it.
What kind of stuff are you growing, though? I know once you get off on the tangent of the native plants, I know that's your
So we're using the oak openings communities to inspire our gardens. And we're using, a couple things about Lucas County that people don't realize. There's, of the 1,700 species of native plants in Ohio, we have 1,300 here. And we have more rare species than any other county in Ohio by a lot. Like if you put in a color map, you just have to make a new band for Lucas County.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are other things that people don't realize. A lot of it has to do with the sand that's in the oak openings. That has allowed a lot of things that are on the edge of its range to persist here. Again, that northern and western intrusions of the biomes. But we're using a lot of that. And that's why I talked with facilities. I said, we got 1,300 species. You think we could come up with 100 that we agree on? And they're like, it sounds like
pretty
it.
Ones?
Yeah, just the pretty ones. I don't even care. And the way I couched it to him was like, I want to make something that looks acceptable.
You can't really argue with that.
And they're like, that's it? I said, yeah.
Acceptable.
Because good and bad are opinions.
Yes. But acceptable.
It deals with compromise. Like, is this okay?
Well, what are some of the most beautiful plants? Because you walk through any of the parks in this time in spring, and you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah. So Lupin's the big one everybody wants, and it's not well behaved. It's touchy. It's really specific
to the oak openings.
To the oak openings. So we've been using lots of butterfly milkweed, which is good for the monarchs. There's 3 that we use predominantly: butterfly milkweed, swamp milkweed, and world milkweed. And
what's the really common one that's
common milkweed?
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not well behaved. It's on a rhizome. It runs everywhere. Mm-hmm. If we do some bigger open field installations, we'll incorporate it. But for gardening, it's not the best.
Okay.
It's not the best. We're losing it there.
No, sorry, no. I just got a little distracted because I see the milkweed. It grows over my house, in my yard. I'm surrounded by cornfields on all sides, and randomly, this farmer just sprayed it all. It all died, and I was super bummed out.
Yeah,
then there was one at the field across the street. There's an abandoned lot, and they came by with a lawnmower and just cut it all down one day. I was like, this really sucks. I was just watching it grow, waiting for it to seed out, and then have all these butterflies, and then they just cut it out.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes that can keep the prairies in place. Other times it's just chopping down things. And if they do it repeatedly, stuff gets exhausted and falls off. But yeah, so we're using that. We're using things like Cardinal Flower and blue lobelia, bright red, bright blue, blazing stars, hot pink. They're just hot pink spikes of.
I don't know if I've seen those.
If you probably not. Girdham Road dunes. There's a couple species that are out there. The dense blazing star is usually more associated with wet prairies and wet meadows. So you'll get wet areas within the prairies, and you'll see a lot of those. There's a lot to see. We should just go out and film it.
I agree. Well, I also on YouTube, I do this other thing called Tales from the Trail, which I think for you would be awesome because we do a lap around a place, and if we can get it on a schedule, do it at a time of year where all that stuff's going down.
Absolutely.
We'll just film it on the fly, and you can talk about it right there. Yeah, I'm excited to see it in person because it's one thing to talk about it. Yeah. People hear it, and they're like, well, whatever. But, hey, we're running close to an hour here, and if you could kind of give me, if you had to pick your favorite thing to see in the oak openings region as a whole, your one pride and joy. It can be anything, any part of the environment. What would it be?
I hate it when people.
I know. Well, that's what I'm here for. People want answers, and they need them now.
The one that's the most accessible would be Erwin Prairie in the third week of June at sunset, because that light comes down across that prairie. All the sedges and grasses are bright screaming green, and there's all these blue flag iris just sticking right up out of them.
So I'm going to have to put that on my calendar.
Oh, man, it's gorgeous.
Because those
it's just
shots...
gorgeous. There, you shoot them straight down. You've got your line of sight. You've got this nice open horizon with a nice black band at the bottom of it. And you can take a lens flare and just make it fire.
Oh, I can't wait, because now I have like something to go out and see in June, because usually I'm just sweating.
June's rough. Yeah, and that's why I picked it. For the full bouquet, though, I mean, starting in July, any of these places, you get into the places that are managed, and there's just flowers. It's literally God's garden in a lot of these places. You just can't believe the numbers of bugs, and in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the bees and the butterflies and the pollinators and stuff.
Well, I already went on a rant on another podcast about how people that are scared of bugs in nature annoy the crap out of me. So we won't go down that road.
We got to have a bee petting episode.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you can pet the bees.
Yeah,
and people just don't realize that. And I'm like, here, let's pet the bees. We had the president looking at one of our installations, and I was like, no, Dr. Gabriel, you got to see this though. And I started petting the bee, and she's like, aren't you afraid that's going to sting you? I'm like, I'll go anaphylactic if it does. And she's like, and you're petting it? And I'm like, it isn't going to sting you.
Yeah. Same with spiders. They're not going to bite.
They're not going to do anything.
They don't care about you. They just want you to leave them alone.
Just leave them alone. Same with snakes.
Yeah.
Don't pick them up. All the snake bites I see are from here to here.
Yeah, because you're dumb.
Because you're being dumb.
Leave it to the pros.
Yes.
All right. And on that note, do you have any last sentiments you want to leave the public with? Free forum.
I like to think I'm a pretty smart guy, and I chose to stay here.
I can agree with that.
And there's good reasons for why I stayed here. Yeah. Let's explore them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Todd, thank you very much for coming on my podcast. I definitely want you to come back again, because I feel like we could go on tangents for just about anything for just about 5 hours at a time.
Pretty much.
And thanks to everybody listening. We'll see you again next time.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast here on YouTube. If you can, go down below and hit that subscribe button. Really appreciate it. Also, if you can, go over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a rating or review. That would also help a lot. I want to thank Todd for coming on tonight. He's an awesome dude. We hung out and talked for like an hour and a half after the podcast was over. Todd has his own YouTube channel where you can learn totally awesome stuff about, where I'm from, the Toledo, Northwest Ohio area. He's got anything you want to know under the sun about plants, animals, flowers, ecology, and all this stuff. It's a wealth of information. I hope to get out there with him sometime, as we stated in the episode, and go check some of this stuff out in person, maybe do a Tales from the Trail episode. But thank you guys for watching, and thank you, Todd. We'll see you all next time.